if I were to give my thoughts, this area above this previous level kind of a line of best fit here, let's say around 325 to 330 on the Qs, would be the next area to watch. So, does that happen in the next couple weeks? We'll have to see, but if a Santa Claus rally hits, it could be a very interesting next couple weeks.
This is the How to Trade Stocks and Options podcast, brought to you by 10MinuteStockTrader.com, where we cover finance, stocks, options, entrepreneurship, education, and money. And here's your host, voted one of the top 100 people in finance, Christopher Ewell. Today's episode is produced in partnership with TrendSpider. Get scanning, charts, backtesting, and alerts all in one place with TrendSpider. Go to trendspider.10MinuteStockTrader.com to get an exclusive discount code and bonuses worth over $100 when you take your free trial at trendspider.10MinuteStockTrader.com. Hey, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified every time we give you more tools, tips, and tricks to help you trade faster and trade smarter every single week.
Hey everybody, Jake here with TrendSpider to go over the weekend update on the broad markets as well as 5 individual stocks that we'll be touching on after that. What an absolutely crazy week for the markets, just an absolute rip. Almost closed right at 370, so that was pretty cool to see, almost hitting a round number there to the upside. But the main thing I want to point out here is, 1, this ascending triangle breakout that we had earlier in the week, and then 2, this longer term breakout on the weekly chart that we have here from this broadening formation. And this, I think, is really going to start kicking in some overall self-fulfilling prophecy stuff with just everybody seeing this breakout happening, and I think it's going to really cause some panic buying into the next couple weeks with possibly a Santa Claus rally coming. Pretty common, especially when the market's this strong into early December, but let's see what happens. Now, the one thing I want to point out here on the raindrop, and this is kind of across the board, but the raindrop was very strong today on SPY, showing that there was a lot of volume at the top of the range today on Friday. And we'll see if we can get to that 373.50-ish, which would be the 1.618 extension from the October correction here that we saw before the elections. So going on to the Qs, it's interesting to see that SPY is hitting new all-time highs, but the Qs are not. That tells me that the Qs are lagging and possibly going to help move the market even higher in the coming weeks. But definitely a nice move up on the weekly side of things here. And then we did have this really strong breakout on the daily chart. And you can see here that we definitely did have a couple days of consolidation at this previous level of resistance, acting as support, and then continuing up today on Friday. And you can see quite a bit of volume at the top of the range here on Friday. And we'll see if that is kind of foretelling anything into Monday's price action. But all in all, if we did continue up here into the rest of the year, which, as I always say, my opinion doesn't matter. Brian Shannon definitely teaches that, and that's kind of where I got it from. But nobody's opinion really matters in the market. But if I were to give my thoughts, this area above this previous level kind of a line of best fit here, let's say around 325 to 330 on the Qs, would be the next area to watch. So, does that happen in the next couple weeks? We'll have to see, but if a Santa Claus rally hits, it could be a very interesting next couple weeks. Now, going into IWM, this is a cool case study looking at a balloon breakout from Thursday's price action through this flag. And so you can see here that we did have quite a bit of volume above this flag resistance here. But what I really want to focus on is if we go to the hollow candle, you'll see that this was actually a wick. And so you can see within the raindrop there that we just saw, there was a lot of volume within that wick. And then we had a really strong move today on Friday. And then the weekly setup just a melt up at this point. So, we have really moved very strong over the last few weeks, and it looks to be continued strength into the weeks to come. So let's see what happens, but all in all, a really strong move. And this is a multi-year breakout here. We topped out in 2018, so we really didn't hit new highs for almost 2 years. So this is really starting to create some panic buying here and just overall bullish sentiment on the smaller caps. Going into VIX, you can see this as well on VIX with the VIX really continuing to melt here. You can see that we still do have this gap below, and that gap starts around $18. We're at $20.62 on the VIX right now. And you can see here what I also did was I measured this move on VIX on the weekly side of things, looking very similar. So what we saw in June of 2020 is looking very similar to what we're seeing here this current time during the year in early December. But we really started this move back in early November. and we've just melted down through since. So what I did was, and you guys can see this, I just pretty much cloned this. So just took it over. It's the exact same thing. So if we did see a similar measured move, and we're going to start this this box right where we opened up at on the week of November 2nd, very similar to how we started here for the week of June 15th. So you can see here we started there. We're starting the top of the box there once again. And so if we did do that, this kind of tells this measured move would put us into that gap fill area. So let's see what happens going into the next couple weeks. But if a Santa Claus rally really starts up, this thing could completely continue to melt, and we'll just have to see what happens. Now let's go into a few individual charts. Fastly was a huge winner this week, especially on Friday. One thing is we did pull back a little bit into the end of the day, so that's why we really want to look at these raindrop charts here and see what was going on within Friday's wick. And so if we look at Friday's raindrop, we can see that there's quite a bit of volume near the top 50% of the range here within that wick. So that's something to keep in mind. But all in all, just kind of a weird candle, honestly. Just a lot of weird volume going on here on the daily side of things. And then on the weekly side of things, if we anchor the volume by price from these March lows, you'll see here that we did try to break through this initial supply zone. We actually did close through it. If you guys remember the video from a couple weeks ago, we were talking about this area being essentially this initial supply, and you can see it took about 2.5 weeks for us to get through this area, and then finally we did break through it, and we technically closed above this volume shelf, which tells us that buyers are in control, and this could act as a launch pad moving into the next couple weeks. So definitely one to keep an eye on moving into the end of the year, and let's see if this initial supply zone will act as a launch pad for price moving forward. Now moving on to BABA. BABA is an interesting one. This one really has not moved much at all in the last couple weeks. We're kind of stuck at this particular area here. We do have a gap above, so if I turn on the gap snake here, you will see that we have actually a couple gaps. So we have one gap that starts around or ends around 275, but then we also have another gap up here that closes around 290.50 or so. So there are gaps above, kind of some open air above for price to move if we did start to move up. Weekly candle looks kind of interesting here. Nothing really too interesting other than the fact that if we do make this chart a little thinner, you'll see that we do have a decent volume shelf forming here. So quite a bit of volume forming right in this area from around 250 to 270. So this is creating possibly a base for price. And remember, as the price moves back down to this area, this is where a majority of shares are holding at break even. So this is where supply likely is drying up, and we'll see if demand comes in to push the price off of this shelf and kind of a launch pad here as well. Moving on to SPCE. SPCE is one that definitely has had some nice moves over the last couple weeks. One thing that I want to point out here is definitely, one, this ascending triangle, and then let's turn off the gap snake here. So the ascending triangle here, definitely something to keep in mind going into the week ahead. But then two, we definitely did have a very strong move off the volume shelf, and remember, you can move this around. So I want to start the anchored volume by price from this high here that we had in late February before the crash. And so you can see how well this volume shelf has acted as a base for price and really acted as a launch pad for price. And this is what we're possibly going to see with BABA and Fastly and those types of companies. So let's see what happens going into the weeks ahead. We already had the volume shelf forming a launch pad here. So the question would be, do we move up and test these previous highs in the mid-30s, upper 30s here in the coming weeks? We'll just have to see what happens. Now moving on to AMD. AMD was an absolute ripper over the last week and a really strong candidate into the week ahead. So we did break out of this ascending triangle. If we anchor a VWAP from this breakout candle, you can see we really held this breakout candle anchored VWAP really nicely. And this was definitely an area where price caught a bid. And you can see here, if we look at the measured move from the previous move, when we broke out of this horizontal level of resistance, if we did move up like this again, this would put us way in the 115s, 120s. So will that happen next week? I highly doubt it. But if we were to measure the move over the next few weeks compared to that measured move that we had in July, this could be a huge runner coming into the weeks ahead. If we anchor the volume by price from this area here, you can see that we finally started to bounce off of this anchored volume by price volume shelf. and starting to create a launch pad for price moving into the next couple weeks. Moving on to Zoom. Zoom is one that we talked about with Puru Saxena on Thursday night. We were talking about Zoom, kind of these Peloton companies that were just so overextended from Corona news. These may be stuck for a while, and that's what he really talked about on Thursday's video. And so if we kind of simply just look at the longer term side of things, this has gone up an absolutely absurd amount. I mean, it's gone up almost 800% over the last 10 to 12 months. And so, this definitely has the opportunity to move down and possibly test this anchored VWAP. Well, actually, sorry, we already broke down through it. So we did close through this pivot anchored VWAP here. If we anchor another VWAP from this pivot here, if we did continue down, that would put Zoom around $300, which is still huge for the year. But, if the vaccine news continues to come out, which it seems like it just every day there's some type of new vaccine news, this is likely not going to work because, or when I say work, it's likely not going to work in Zoom's favor because Zoom is really thriving off of this stay-at-home mentality, this stay-at-home kind of way of life right now. So if this does continue, vaccine news, and the vaccine really starts to be pumped out, this is likely going to probably take a hit. Now, obviously, nobody knows what's going to happen, but if I were to simply just draw a trend line right here, if we break down through this trend line right here, that's when things definitely get interesting. But for now, we are still in, one, a long-term uptrend, then two, from this pivot here that we have starting in, from this breakout we have starting in June, and you can see we've tested this area a couple times. We could even really draw another trend line here, kind of making this parallel to make it more of a zone rather than just a trend line. But you can see we are still holding for now. We'll really have to keep an eye on this area, see if it holds into the coming weeks. But definitely one of those stocks that out of all the stocks in the market, this one has definitely had pretty big opportunities arise from coronavirus. And if coronavirus does start to get some type of handle on it with the vaccine, this is likely going to be one that gets hit probably harder than others. So definitely wanted to point out Zoom, a couple others, and hopefully this video was helpful going into the week ahead. Hopefully everybody had a great week. For all of those that joined the video with our guest Puru last night, today's Friday. If you're watching this on Sunday, it wouldn't be last night, but from Thursday night on, December 3rd, we recorded the video on December 2nd and then released it on the 3rd. So the information that we went over is still very relevant. The charts that we went over are definitely still relevant as they were weekly candles. So definitely make sure to check that out. I'll make sure to put that link in the video description below. And if you have any questions, let us know. Remember, you can have up to 7 days to try our software out for free. Try these anchored VWAPs out, anchored volume by price, raindrops. So you have 7 days free, and then you can choose your pricing plan either monthly or annually. So if you have any questions at all, definitely let us know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and hopefully everybody has a great weekend, and thank you for watching.
Okay, so what'd you think? That was pretty incredible, right? Now, if you like that, that's only a taste, only a sample of what you're going to find in the full AI stock trading system. And I really highly encourage you to go and check this out. Obviously, you are interested in learning on how to trade, and that's why you're listening to this podcast. Now, I'm going to take and download my entire trading system that I use day in and day out onto you. And the only way I'm going to be able to do that is over at the AIStockTradingSystem.com. You're going to get phase 1, 2, and 3, several bonuses, and on top of that, I'm going to walk you through over a dozen trades that I put on inside of my account, holding your hand and showing you exactly how I got in, how I got out, how I use the artificial intelligence data, and how this could work inside of your own trading portfolio on a daily basis. So make sure you head on over to AIStockTradingSystem.com. That's AIStockTradingSystem.com to learn more and to get started and to download my decade plus worth of trading experience into your hands so you can start using the AI stock trading system today, the 5-step system to take the guesswork out of trading. Hey, if you like this video, let me know by leaving me a like below, and then subscribe and share it with somebody you think could use it as well. Be sure to comment below with your biggest takeaway from this episode and any suggestions you have for future episodes. And finally, make sure you watch these other videos to help you trade faster and trade smarter, and I'll see you on the next episode.